hope is in a stone. And Barnava asks a rhetorical question, and he says, no, 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 our hope is not in a stone. Elohim forbid. But there is a religion whose hope is in a stone, and a lot of pagan religions whose hope is in a stone. And let me think of one off the top of my head. Ready? Allahu Akbar. I'm so scared of the Muslims. Yesterday when I was in the hotel, as soon as I started dissing Muhammad, I raised my voice and I raised the volume on the speaker. Just in case there were any folks in the hall who were Muslims and needed to hear it. We're the head, not the tail. Amen. For every Jew at 22, honey. Not to use and abuse, but in self-defense. Only. 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 I'll just move on. Is there our hope in a stone? Elohim forbid. And by the way, if every Jew had a 22, do you think the Nazis would have herded our people into cattle cars and shipped us off to Treblinka and Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen? Do you think they could have never done that? The first thing Hitler did when he came to power is pass gun control legislation to disarm the Jewish people. That's the first thing he did, Zachariah. Look it up on the internet. That's the first thing he did. That's the first thing Stalin did before he massacred 10 million people or more. Disarm the people. Keep the guns in the hands of the government, and of course the criminals who don't care about legality of any kind. But disarm the people. I can preach on that, but I'll move on. Elohim forbid. But I used to believe the same story. Listen to the media. Oh, we've got to get rid of all these weapons. It's killing us. No, it's not. What killed that Connecticut doctor and his family? What killed? Could you imagine if that wife or those children had an arm in that house? Could you imagine if they had a firearm? They'd still be alive. How about Chris Benoit's wife, the wrestler? If she had a firearm, you lay your hands on me and start choking me, I'll blow you away. No, we hear about that one nut who goes postal every 5 years. Now we hear about that for 20 years. But we don't hear about all the lives that are saved because Israel has the ability and the legality to possess a firearm in self-defense, according to the Second Amendment. No wonder there's not a Bill of Rights Day. How many of you have celebrated Bill of Rights Day last year? Do you know when Bill of Rights Day is? December 15th. I've never celebrated Bill of Rights Day. The Bill of Rights is the guarantee that the Constitution is not abused by a tyrannical government against you and me. Freedom of speech, First Amendment. The right to bear arms, Second Amendment. The right not to convict yourself and to remain silent. Your Miranda rights. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. That's the Fifth Amendment. Those are the Bill of Rights. What happened to Bill of Rights Day? It's a national legislation. You didn't know? Congress made it a national day of celebration. But we celebrate July 4th so our kids can act silly and blow firecrackers. But those Bill of Rights that guard the Constitution from using against us, nobody celebrates that. I told you I'm going to move on because I'm going to get in trouble if I don't. Don't have time. You want to teach? Come to my house. I'll give you a lecture. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. I didn't always think like that. It is in our hope in a stone. Elohim forbid. But it is thus, well, I want to say this. Yeshua, now you're going to like this. Yeshua is our Hard Rock Cafe. I believe that, yes. Yeshua is our Hard Rock Cafe. Because you'll see this in a second. Let me read the whole thing. So the Kaaba in Mecca is a rock. Did you know that? The dome of the rock that sits where our holy temple used to sit. There's a rock. The dome of the rock, that big golden ugly bubble. I can't believe I said that. On top of Mount Moriah If you go underneath that dome, the dome of the rock, you know what you're going to find? A stone, man. And then they're going to take you and they're going to say, you see this stone right here? This is where Muhammad had his midnight ride to the heavens on a horse. No, I can't see it. Can you please show me that? I'm a little colorblind right now. Oh, you know, yeah, there's a footprint of a horse. That's the horse that took Muhammad to heaven. Well, wait, time out, Mr. Cleric. The Quran says Muhammad did not go to heaven. The Quran says he had a vision of heaven, and Allah took him to heaven on a horse in a vision. So if it's only a vision according to the Quran, how can you show me a fossilized footprint?
Right.
Please get your story straight. Is that good, Vincent? You like that, huh? Baruch Hashem Yahweh. So under the Dome of the Rock, there's a stone where Muhammad allegedly went on his midnight ride to heaven. In the Kaaba in Mecca, there is a stone that Abraham allegedly was ready to sacrifice Ishmael. What's wrong with that story? Abraham was not ready in the Akedah Yitzchak. In the Akedah, Abraham was not ready to kill Yitzchak. Ishmael. He was ready to kill Yitzchak. Wrong person, wrong place. That the Akedah didn't happen in Mecca, it happened in Jerusalem. A slightly off base, would you say? But that's where that rock, everything in Islam has a rock attached to it. The Dome of the Rock, the Kaaba and the rock. The Kaaba is a cubicle, and they go around the rock. Woo, 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 around the rock. Circuventilating, whatever they do there. Thank you. Thank you for the demonstration, Brother Darrell. Look at the end of verse 3. But as has been said, Yahweh has made strong his flesh. For he said, he made me as it were a hard rock. So as opposed to all these real rocks, Yeshua, his flesh, look at verse 3. Those, how many have the Besorah of Barnava? Or the Epistle of Barnava? 1, I know we have 2, 3. Look at this, look with me. Look at the end of verse 3. Speaking about his strong flesh, it is Yahweh who made Yeshua's flesh strong. How strong? As it were a hard rock. Now listen to me. If you didn't believe the whole wheat unleavened bread before, you ought to believe it now. His flesh was not soft from the dust, like your flesh and my flesh is soft from the dust. Yahweh made his flesh harder than the flesh of any man who ever lived. That's what Barnava said. Amen. That's why I call him my Hard Rock Cafe. Like a cafe, he's always open. And his flesh has nothing to do with my flesh. It is hard rock, baby. Hard as rock. When you touch my flesh, you know, I could get myself in trouble here and say, turn to your rabbi and pinch his flesh. I know some of you have been dreaming to do that, dying to do that, waiting for the right opportunity. Catholics will help you. That's part of their discipleship program if you want to learn how to pinch your flesh. Ow, man, it hurts. It's like really soft. But his flesh was like a rock. It knew no pain until those nails arrived, because he was ordained for those nails. Can you imagine that? When the sword came, he rejected the sword, but he accepted the nails. So it says here, I'm going to read it again for those of you who don't have a copy. Barnava 6:3. What then did he say? He that believes in him shall live forever. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Is this then our hope then in a stone? No. Elohim forbid. But it is thus, he said, because Yahweh made strong his flesh, meaning Yahweh wouldn't strengthen your flesh without a resurrection. Yahweh strengthened his own flesh. Yahweh wouldn't strengthen your flesh without a resurrection, honey, but he strengthened his own flesh because it was his own flesh. Amen. Hallelujah. And he can make it as strong as he wants. Hallelujah. To that about Yahweh. Now look at the end of verse 3. He made his flesh as it were hard rock. I think there's a verse in the Bible that says Yeshua set his face as it were like a flint. Now we think, oh, that's a metaphor. Oh, that's an allegory. That means he was determined to go to Jerusalem and meet his destiny to be crucified. Yes, it does mean that, but it also means, in conjunction with Barnava, chapter 6, verse 3, that his face, the skin on his face matched the skin on his hand. It was not soft like our skin, it was hard skin. It was hard like a rock. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. This proves that he didn't have our flesh. Barnava, no wonder Satan took this out of the Bible. It confirms that his flesh had no earthly origin, and it wasn't soft, it was rock hard. You cannot say that about our flesh. No one can say that about their own flesh. It's earthly. From dirt, from dust thou art, to dust thou shalt return. Whenever I want to get depressed, that's the verse I meditate on. Okay? If I feel I've earned the right to be depressed, that's the verse I go to. From dust thou art, to dust you shall return. What a bummer. Me? You mean Superman, me, you, me, myself, and I? The unholy trinity? You mean we're going to the dust?
Yes, sir. Count on it.
You mean I, who have all this I problem? I will, I want, I there, I was, I will be, I was, I used to, I could have, I would have, I should have, all the I problems in this unholy trinity is all going to the dust. I give out. I give out. If you knew what that means, you wouldn't be saying amen. I'll just move on now. Let's just talk about my Hard Rock Cafe. Because it is thus Yahweh has made strong his own flesh. For he said, and he made me as it were a hard rock. So what Barnava is saying is this. He was not a literal stone, but, don't miss this now, but his flesh was as hard as stone. He might as well have been a stone, but he was not made like a stone, he was made like a human, but his flesh was as rock solid as a stone.
Amen.
Does any of this make sense?
Yes.
So you understand how his flesh was different than our flesh.
Yes.
It wasn't the same flesh.
Exactly.
Then again, verse 4. The stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. And again he said, this is the day great and wonderful which Yahweh has made. When Yahweh made that stone rock hard, that was a great and wonderful day. A body you have prepared for me. I have come to do thy will, O Yahweh. Your Torah is in my heart. Tehillim 40 tells us why Yahweh allowed to send himself as the stone.
Yes. Because
his Torah was already in his heart. He made the Torah, and the Torah was in his heart. Verse 5. Barnava 6:5. Is anyone enjoying?
Amen.
Oh, let's try the empty side. Is anyone enjoying?
Amen. Wake up over there. Amen. All right. Amen. All right now. Keep going. Teach.
I write to you more simply that you may understand. Why is Barnava keeping it simple? He's using the KISS method. Keep it simple, silly dilly. We could all understand that if his flesh was like a rock, it wasn't the same as our flesh. We can all understand that, right? We have a hard time sometimes with the concept of the whole wheat unleavened bread, but we can understand if you say his flesh was like a rock and my flesh is soft as Kleenex tissue, we could all relate to that. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. He came in his own flesh. Todah Rabah Yahweh. I write to you more simply, verse 5, like a good shepherd, like a good teacher, that you may understand. See, that's the gift of teaching. The gift of teaching is not head knowledge. Okay, you can fill up with head knowledge like you could fill up with diesel fuel. How many have been tempted to go to a gas station and fill up with diesel fuel?
No, I don't think so. Not these days.
I've never had that temptation, neither have I, don't worry. But knowledge is like, knowledge puffs up.
That's true. That's so true.
Love edifies. Some folks like to talk about love. Other people actually are willing to forgive and make the first step. And realize you need forgiveness. But getting back to where were we?
Teach.
Where were we?
5.
Hmm?
5.
Who? 5? No, I was making a point. Knowledge. There are a lot of people who have knowledge, in this case, scriptural knowledge, who cannot teach their way out of a paper bag. I sat under people who had more knowledge than I had, or more knowledge than you had, and they were teaching Isaiah for 5 years. They never got out of Isaiah. You think I'm bad? Rivka can tell you, this guy was a brilliant man. He studied, he read Latin, Aramaic, Chinese, Korean. He memorized John 3:16 in every language. But when it came to teaching every week, it was like, chamana, 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 chamana. Chamana, chamana, chamana. He was like the Jackie Gleason of the Messianic movement.
Oh my God.
And every time it was the rabbi's turn to take over, he'd go, Rabbi Norton, take over. Hey, this guy was full of knowledge. No, the gift of the, you want the core of the gift of teaching? Here's the core. The core of the gift of teaching is simplify it. Keep it simple. Repeat yourself. Just like TV does with the same commercial. That's why the same commercial comes on. If one of your complaints about Rabbi Moshe is that he's too repetitive, think to yourself, that's what makes him a good teacher. He repeats himself.
Teach.
And I try to keep things simple. Because Yahweh knows everything else in your life is repetitive.
Uh-oh.
That's what you remember when things are repetitive. I write to you more simply that you may understand. Barnava said, I'm smarter than this, but I'm keeping it simple. The relaying of knowledge in an easy to understand manner makes you a good teacher. The relaying of knowledge in an easy to understand manner makes you a good teacher. Then at the end of verse 5, Barnava says this, I write to you simply because number 1, I love you. Number 2, not only do I love you, but I am the outcast of your love. In order to be a good teacher of the word of Yahweh, you need to experience a healthy dose of rejection. And not just rejection from Judas Iscariot in your life to perfect you and mold you for the great tribulation. For it is the time of Yaakov's trouble, Yirmiyahu 30 verse 7. And if you're not tested, if the footmen have wearied thee, how will you contend with horses, saith Yahweh? If I can't come to shul because there's a fight in my family, or things are not hunky-dory, and everything is right, if I'm not tested now, if the footmen have wearied me, how will I contend with the horses of the great tribulation, the horses of the apocalypse? Praise Yahweh, the tribulation worketh patience.
Yes.
And patience has its perfect work.
Hallelujah.
And let it bring forth love. Look at this. He says, I write to you simply because I have become an outcast of your love. Teach. Some folks, the more you love them,
the worse they get.
The more of an outcast you become. But you're an outcast not from Yahweh, but from their love. Not his love, from their love. Verse 6. And I praise Yahweh for the Judas. You can never, Zechariah, you will never survive in the ministry unless you learn to look for your Judases and praise Yahweh for all the Judases that are going to come into your life. That's the only way you can survive in ministry. Because we are not greater than our master. If they call the master Beelzebub, how much more will they call them of his house? Are we greater than Yeshua?
Yes, we are.
No, we're not.
No.
If he had a Judas, you will have many. When I went into the ministry, I talked to Pastor Rowan. One of the first things I said, Pastor, if there's one thing you can tell me about the ministry to prepare me for this insane asylum.
Yes.
Sometimes called the body of Yeshua. Let's be honest.
Sometimes it's very crazy.
Sometimes.
Very crazy.
I said, if there's one thing you can tell me, what would it be? He said, let me tell you 2 things. Hold them, love them, and hold them lightly. Because they're not yours. They come and go. They come and go. Love them while you have them. Hold them lightly. and be ready to be betrayed. That was my introduction to the ministry. But 24 years later, he knew what he was talking about. Amen? He knew what he was talking about. Tadarabayahu. Okay. Verse 6. Let's wind it up in a few minutes. Verse 6. We still have tape? A little bit? Do you know how to multiply the tape? Like our master multiplied the loaves and the fishes? You know how to do that? Well, tell me how to do that later, because I don't know how to do that.
Start multiplying. In other words, start multiplying.
Verse 6. What then said the prophet again? The synagogue of the wicked came around me. They surrounded me as bees do a honeycomb. And over my garment they cast lots. This is not the synagogue of the Jews. This is the synagogue of the wicked. Were there only Jews at his cross? No. There were non-Jews at his cross, his tree, his stake. So the synagogue of the wicked does not go by race. Write it down. What determines the synagogue of the wicked is emunah versus no emunah. If you have no emunah, welcome. You're part of the synagogue of the wicked. If you have emunah, you're part of the synagogue.